Welcome to the next episode of the Existential Files. We're joined again by Peter Hankins. And Louie, you had some questions about, is it the Brain Preservation Society?
Foundation. I mean, certainly it's something that I found, we find interesting those blog topics of artificial intelligence, what it is to be alive, consciousness. And I saw your name on this Brain Preservation Foundation.
Yes.
Peter. So is this something that you're involved with, or?
Well, they probably exaggerate my involvement. They contacted me a while ago and asked if I'd be interested. And I said, well, I don't really think your thing is going to work, but I'm happy to be a critical friend, as it were, if you'd like that. I think on their website now, there's a thing that almost suggests I'm like a board member or something. I don't know what luster my name could possibly add to their organisation, but there it is. But
I was impressed.
And at the very least, then explain to us then, even if it's not something you necessarily buy into, but what would be the idea behind that?
I suppose their premise is that there are various ways you can seek immortality, and probably the best one is, as Woody Allen said, I don't want immortality through my work. I want to be immortal by not dying. They aim to actually preserve your actual physical brain so that it can be kind of brought back to life. And I suppose I was well disposed towards them because that seemed to me a kind of in opposition to a view that's very often put forward these days, the idea that you could be uploaded into a computer program and you could attain immortality by becoming software, basically, which I'm pretty sure is completely impossible for all sorts of reasons. So
can I ask you though, Peter, because I was reading some of your blog earlier, and so do you think that computers can't think like a human being? I mean, you seem to be a bit down on AI, is that right?
Yeah, I don't think that consciousness is computational finally in its nature. I'm sure that computation can play like a subserving role and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure I think consciousness in essence is a very extended development of the faculty of recognition. And I think recognition is a non-formal system. I don't think you can come up with an algorithm or a set of rules that will work universally for recognition. And for that reason, I don't think it can be computational.
So you don't think so? So it's
can I just ask a question to clarify what Peter's already said, though? Because a few phrases that I was trying to jot down. Just an extended faculty of recognition.
Yes. You see, because there's an awful lot to cover here, really. But you see, the way I look at it is when you start with simple organisms, they are basically stimulus response kind of things. They get a stimulus, they provide a fixed response, and as things get more complicated, they're among other things, apart from giving more complicated responses, they're also able to recognise more complex stimuli. Now, with us humans, that has gone kind of stratospheric to the point where we're able to recognise abstract concepts, things that point to future developments, and so we're able to think about the future in a way that other animals aren't. We're also able to build what amounts to meaning out of this ability to recognise complex relationships, and that use of meaning is really one of the fundamental parts of the easy problem of consciousness, and it's what helps us to talk to ourselves, which is a key part of consciousness. So sorry, I'm really skating over an awful lot of stuff rather.
Sure.
But so I think, there was a time when people used to think that association was like this really fundamental mechanism of how the brain worked. I think it's not association; it's recognition. And because I think you can't reduce recognition to a formal system, I don't think you can do it computationally.
So you don't think so? It's not that biology is special. Then it's what it does is you can't replicate it in an artificial way.
I like the idea. Gerald Edelman came up with a really good idea and then surrounded it with a lot of crap, which unfortunately probably led to it not being properly recognized. He thought that the brain worked a bit like the immune system. the immune system has to be able to deal with, any kind of nasty bug or whatever that comes in, even though it's never seen them before and has no idea what the world is going to throw at it next. And the way it does that is just come up with millions and millions of different, molecular combinations and throw them all at it and see what sticks. And then when something sticks, it produces a lot more of that. And his idea was that the brain works pretty much the same way, that it throws millions of different patterns at reality and waits to see till one sticks, and then it does something with that. Now, I think that's quite a good idea, and that's probably probably close to how it does work.
Like a kind of a cognitive fecundity, then.
Yes, but it's not computational.
You and your big words, Louie. You and your big words. See, all I thought from that was then essentially it works on trial and error.
It does, but it's different to a computational process because, there are computational processes that work on trial and error, but typically they start out with a list in advance, or at least you know what it is, you know what the options are you're testing. Whereas I think with the immune system, or probably with the brain, it's not clear in advance what your options even are. You're just throwing all this stuff out, and as it were, the key creates the lock, or the other way around. Until something works, you didn't even know that was a combination, if you see what I mean. I'm not expressing myself very clearly.
I think to me, you're making some fantastic sense. And I think, right, because whereas trial and error, normally saying, well, trial and error is usually a process to allow us to find the solution.
Yeah.
This is one where there is no clear solution or what a solution might be or anything. It's just
that's right.
Stuff is happening in the way that I'm guessing, where Louie may be able to jump in and correct me or add to it in an evolutionary type way, in an adaptive way, just in the context of the universe which is there, and that's how it's developing and evolving. So it's nothing. It's the so-called, again, correct me if I'm using this term wrong, from I'm going to say our friend we've cited a few times early on, Richard Dawkins, like a blind watchmaker. There's no pre-programmed plan. It's still complexity, and from that can come these things that we experience around us.
That's right, and in fact, Edelman described his process as Neural Darwinism, though I don't think that was a particularly good label, but he obviously saw a connection there as well. Yeah, so that's one reason why.
Why do you say not that then? Because I was thinking, well, it sounds similar. Why do you think that's not a useful?
Well, because in evolution you have reproduction and differential survival, and with this one, although it is a selective mechanism, you don't have different generations coming along and surviving or reproducing in different ways. So there is an analogy there, but it's a bit imprecise, I would say. Perhaps I'm being picky, but
breaks down when you start picking at it.
The other thing was, I think it was a bad move for Edelman. He was really bad at choosing terminology, because once he'd labelled it Neural Darwinism, people tended to think, oh, Darwinism, well, we know what that is, so we don't know, that's not very interesting. Whereas actually, I thought his idea was something distinctively different that deserved a bit more attention.
And the essence of that, essentially, linking it with being like an immune system, that kind of is central to his idea. Is that right?
Yeah.
Great. Louie?
That's one reason why I think we can't upload ourselves. The other is that, again, it comes back to reality, and I think we are real one-off physical objects. People who think we can, we consist of data, I think they're kind of harking back to the idea of a detachable spirit in some ways, but I don't think we're like that. I think we actually are these lumps of meat, and we only get one go, and that's it.
Well, I think I agree with you that you can't upload yourself. By all means, create a chatbot that can answer, it passes a Turing test, but I don't really give a shit if that survives into the future or not. It's not me, is it?
No, I wouldn't say so.
But
when I was hearing initially, so you've now explained the brain preservation thing, is the idea of actually a kind of uploading. But to me, I was hearing it literally as being brain preservation, being able to preserve one's brain when you're dead.
Well,
I think that's what it is. Yeah,
that is what the Brain Preservation Trust is about.
Okay.
And so I suppose that's why it was possibly attractive to me, because although I don't think their procedure is going to work, actually keeping your physical brain alive actually does seem to me, in principle, that would be a way of keeping you alive, whereas uploading you into a computer probably isn't. Well, I'm sure it isn't.
And on your blog, Peter, you talk about there being a third way then between, I think, empirical, neither empirical nor rational then. So have you got an idea of what that way is?
Oh, I've kind of despaired about it, really. I think there are two. I mean, there are two ways of accounting for explaining things. Really, we've got two rational tools. We've got induction and deduction. We can use logic, or we can use build up observations empirically and come to conclusions. Now, I think both of those are in different ways using this faculty of recognition, because pure logic is recognizing continuity of truth values across certain structures, and empirical stuff is you gather a lot of data and you recognize that there's some underlying thing, that there's an energy or a structure or a process underlying all these bits of data. So they both rely on recognition, but neither of them can then explain recognition, and neither of them can do certain other jobs like explain where the universe came from. Because if you use purely logical thought, it only deals in abstractions, and it's only going to give you an abstract answer at the end of the day, whereas reality is not abstract, it's particular, and it's the particularity that you need to explain. Whereas empirical research can give you an explanation of the particular, but it only gives you an explanation in terms of other particulars, usually earlier particulars, causally earlier particulars or whatever. Sorry, that's the doorbell.
Do you need to get the door?
We often find that actually these
my daughter will get it.
Nicely rounded up by the bell, but carry on, yeah.
So neither of those is going to work. If there was a third way, then we'd have some hope of cracking it. But other than retreating to pure recognition itself and kind of contemplating reality and hoping it makes sense, I don't know what that would be.
And Pete, if I can ask, so do you have any? I mean, we asked our last guest, why does the universe exist? And he's a physicist, and he said, he gave us his answer. I mean, do you have any? I mean, what's your take on why the universe exists, or did you have any thoughts on that, whether it's informed by consciousness or not?
Well, for the reasons I've just been talking about, I think there probably isn't an answer. It's one of those questions. It's one of those things like the philosopher's stone or the perpetual motion machine that we probably shouldn't keep going after. However,
squaring the circle.
Yeah. However, I can't quite resist, to be honest. And I wonder what kind of universe is motivated. There are various ways you can imagine the universe running, but it seems very odd that we should have one that comes into existence and then stops. There's a sense in which that's unmotivated. I mean, if it was going to reach a stopping point, why didn't it just start there and save itself a lot of bother? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or if it starts with a lot of energy and whatnot, how did it manage to do that? Doesn't that contradict the principle that energy always decreases? The only one the only form of the universe I can think of that makes any sense is one that springs into existence for some reason and then carries on getting more and more complicated indefinitely, keeps transcending itself. So I think that's the way it works. I know that's in flagrant contradiction of modern astrophysics and whatnot, but I admit it's to some degree a kind of act of faith rather than a completely cogent logical argument. But that's the kind of universe I'd be inclined to believe in.
And I think it's as much insight into what the universe is as anyone else can give us. That's based in reality. I don't think no one knows the answers, did they? So.
No, and
you've covered so much ground there. You've got so much ground there. I mean, I'm going to share with you some notes I've been writing as we speak. I sometimes say to Louie, I find myself in a room where I've got a while just jot things as you. And you just look back at how much we've covered there, and I think it's really interesting. Like you say, we've talked about the limits of science. We've talked about what consciousness might be, hard problem, easy problem, relationship between them, different approaches. And so far, at least, and again, we may pick up this in a future podcast or in other ways, that and I love the fact that you've been willing to then speculate beyond that. And again, many of us, we're all so-called trained in science. We have that as a kind of an approach, recognizing and willing to question and explore what it can do, what it maybe can't do, and willing to suggest, well, it may work in this way, and I've just written down that there, and that may well be an act of faith. And that's something we're going to respond back to, what it means for something to be an act of faith, and how much you go, well, another phrase I picked up on where you're linking the empirical approach and the rational approach, and maybe this kind of third way, and one phrase you said, and it's about using different elements here and hoping things make sense, which again has that feeling of maybe, in time, as we continue to evolve, as the universe continues to evolve, things will become clearer. And
that's it, exactly, yes.
Idea. But right or wrong, we get to find out, or maybe our future generations do.
Somebody
Peter,
sometime.
Peter, can I say thank you again for joining us?
Yep, thank you very much, Peter. That was brilliant. Thank you.
All right.
And we'll see you again.
And maybe we'll have you back on again in the future as well.
Oh, lovely.
Oh, we've got them on recording saying that. Fantastic. Well,
there you go.
Thank you, Peter.
All right.
Speak to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.